Camera's recording. Hey you all, welcome back. We're going to talk about the AC systems in this 1979 Lincoln Continental, which should actually work. The same concept we're going to do should work in a lot of different GM cars from about the mid 60s throughout most of the 70s. There was a few Fords, and we'll kind of go over certain models and we'll go over some other GM models and all that kind of stuff as to what would have what they call a POA valve, and we'll go through what that is. We're going to talk about what this is and go through what we're planning on doing, because in this car, basically, I myself have not done anything with the air conditioning system in this car. I bought it last September and hadn't really needed to do anything with it. It's starting to get a little warm now. Now we're going to fix it. The AC system tends to work for a little while, and then it kind of goes back to blowing warmish air, and we've got a lot of freezing going on with the evaporator and the line, up top. It gets so cold that it just forms ice on it, and that's a typical type of thing of a POA valve that's just not functioning correctly. Also, what this car does, I assume, has 134A in it, because it's got the updated little adapters, that's basically somebody filled it with R134A, but it still has the original POA valve. Can't do that. I guess you can, but the system's not going to work. The system between R12 and 134A is going to work off of different pressures. And so if you were to use the original POA valve on here, you pretty much, to get it to work efficiently, got to use R12. There are some places you can get POA valves and stuff. I'm not sure about if it's for Ford, or there was a couple of different kinds. Frigidaire made a few of them for a lot of GM cars. The Fords used, I want to say 7, 8, maybe 9 or 10, a lot of different types of ones from Delco, I believe. And like any of those type of ones, they're not rebuildable, not serviceable or anything like. You just got to replace it. I think you can get ones that are made for R134A. I want to go this route with this deal here, which we'll talk about in depth later on, which actually has a pressure sensor in it, and this is calibrated and everything and made and designed to work on 134A, because I'm not going to go through the hassle of trying to find R12, and if you possibly have a leak, then I'm pretty sure we don't have a leak, but it could down the road, and I don't want to deal with it. With the system working as it's supposed to, with something like this, it's calibrated for 134A. This system will cool really good in this car, especially. So it's not like you need to have R12, even though R12 systems were always known to work, a lot better than the 134A systems. But R12 is extremely expensive. If you can still find it, but it is extremely expensive. And so we're just going to go with the 134A with this. We'll talk about what this is, what it does, but first let's get a different camera view so I can show you the system in this car, to show you what it is now and how this is going to fit and play into it, and then we're going to do it. So anyways, let's get a different camera view. Alright, so basically in this car, what we're having the issue with is this is all freezing all the way up around. I mean, it forms so much ice on it, and the pressures just don't get quite right. The high side seems like it stays about where it needs to, but the low pressure's a lot higher pressure than it should be. That's a pretty typical sign of this thing. This is your POA valve right here, and it pretty much opens and bypasses some of the higher pressure and all that kind of stuff to allow this thing to not be so cold, because in these systems, your compressor, once you turn on the AC, the compressor is on. Modern vehicles nowadays go off sometimes with between pressure switches and or thermostats, both, or either or. I don't really know for sure on some of the really modern stuff, but thermostat's most common. So if it gets too cold, it will cycle the compressor off. It'll turn the compressor off for a little bit, allow it not to get so cold. Then when it returns to a certain temperature, it restarts the air compressor, and so, or not the air compressor, the AC compressor, and it just cycles it back and forth. And that's what it's supposed to do in modern vehicles, is your compressor will cycle at different times when you're using the system. A lot of times you don't really notice it, but other times you might. But it just basically just keeps everything from freezing up. But these cars with the POA valve, and the POA is a pilot operated absolute valve. That's the, what the abbreviation for POA stands for. And you won't find them much on anything pretty much past the early 80s. What we'll do is we'll go through, this is in the kit they sent, your instructions on how to hook this deal up. They also sent this. What I'll try to do is just kind of stop right here. You can pause the video. You can look and see what different, a lot of different vehicles that they worked on. So you got Cadillac, Pontiac, Buick, Chevrolet, Chevy, GMC, which is pretty much just GMC. Then you got all the Fords. It even goes with Rolls-Royce. I didn't even notice that the first time I looked at that. And we got Oldsmobile, Lincoln, and then Mercury. So for this car, we're going to be looking at right down to the bottom, just one up above where it says Mercury, but we're looking at 1979 Lincoln and also 1979 Lincoln Mark IV. And so we got our kit number at 52558, and that's what this kit number is right here. So, oh, whoops, I was looking at I went the wrong. 1979 Lincoln, and it's going to be a Lincoln, because this is a Lincoln Continental. This is going to be, and then the next one's going to be Lincoln Mark IV. 2559, and that's the kit that we've got. That's what comes with this here, and this wiring harness. Believe that came with it, and then your O-rings to go in here. And essentially, this is what we're going to be taking off this fitting, and we're going to be taking off this fitting. We're going to take off this fitting. As you can see on this deal, it's got a place for that fitting to go. Then it adds in a pressure switch, and then this is already set up for your 134A connector for your gauge sets. So the first thing you got to do, obviously, is you got to get this system evacuated. I'm not going to film all of that because that would take this video to be a lot longer than it's already going to be too long for, I think, for some people's attention span. But anyways, we're not going to film all that and show you how to run a AC machine and all that kind of stuff when there are lots of other videos out there, and you probably don't have one. Just take your car to a shop somewhere and just have them evacuate it if you're planning on doing this stuff yourself, and then once you get all this stuff done, then you can have it recharged again. So that's usually the best way to do it. So anyway, but you're gonna have to get the AC system, because you're gonna be breaking this apart here, and it'll leak all out, and you're not supposed to do it that way. Anyway, so what this does is this is in turn going to work off of pressure, hence the new pressure switch that's been added onto this. And this is this came from these guys here, and I really had a good website set up and all that kind of stuff. And obviously it looks like they've got a patent number on what they've got going on here, so I don't know if any other places sell it, or, you know, apparently they're not supposed to. Oh, and the difference between the add an A at the end of the part number for a 134A service port, and that's what we got here. You can get this setup for an R12, and you can get an R12 service port, which looks just like that. Let's get the camera to focus on that. If you were to take this fitting off, this fitting right here, that's kind of sort of what your R12 port's gonna look like. That's for the low side, and then this over here is your high side. This is kind of a funky one, but pretty much that's what all they did here is they just went through, you know, put the fittings on here and charged it with, I would assume, 134A. I mean, if it's got these style of fittings on there, I was pretty sure that's what they charged it with. But this particular POA valve, as I mentioned before, is calibrated and set up for R12, and they will work at different pressures when this needs to open and close. Hence, also they work on different pressures for this pressure switch to work between whichever refrigerant you're filling it with. So with this particular system, what you're doing is we're going to wire this sensor in series with your main power that comes from when you turn this compressor on, so that it runs through this switch. So when this switch is in a certain position, it's closed and allows current to go through it and back to your compressor to turn your compressor on. And then when this switch gets to the pressures that it needs to like say if the pressure is getting too high on the low side, and this is probably, you know, before this ends up starting to freeze, the pressure starts to get a little bit too high, this pressure switch will open the contacts, and now you don't have any power coming over here, and it'll turn your compressor off until the pressures get back down to where this switch wants them to be. Hence, it's basically turns this system from actually having a POA valve to basically not having a POA valve and going off of a pressure switch. Then it'll cycle the compressor back and forth, calibrated for 134A, and the system will work not as good as an R12, but it'll work really good, and that's what we're going to do. So all right, so I did get a little distracted, so I don't know exactly where I left off. I'm trying not, you know, trying to film stuff, but I can't just like film everything, or else this will be like a, you know, hour long or more than an hour video or whatever. But it's pretty self-explanatory how this goes in. You know, break these apart, and I believe we were talking about needing to get the system evacuated. Now this used to point down, and I didn't want it pointing down because I didn't want my service port pointing down. I also didn't want this pointed down. This is where the plug's gonna go, and we still got to double check and make sure it's gonna clear the hood and everything. It should, but we're not 100% sure yet. But if not, we'll just rotate it over a little bit. But I was two things with this that I was a little bit, well, one thing I was disappointed at, the other one's not a big deal, but I'm going to mention it. The first thing is both of the O-rings were the same size for these fittings here, and that's not what you need. One needs to be a little bit smaller, and all you need to do is just go to Harbor Freight and get you a set like this, and this will have just pretty much about every size O-ring that you would need. But anyways, that's the minor thing there. The other thing is, you know, they make these things for a lot of different cars. You know, if you look on here, this 2559 is also going to be in well, I'm not seeing it in any other besides a Ford, you know, an actual, you know, you're going to see it in the actual Ford lineup right at 2559 right there. in 79. So not seeing it anywhere else, but I was just kind of disappointed that the original mount, you know, your AC service port is in the way when this all gets into place, because this don't move. This does. This will flex a little bit out of the way, but anyways, we just kind of bent it around over so it doesn't interfere with that port when we put the gauges on there. Just zip tied it. It's pretty secure and snug. I would just rather it been, you know, if this thing would have been just a little bit longer and then had the port moved in a different place or whatever, if that's possible. I'm sure it is, to allow, and then, you know, also have this thing be bigger around. But they could have designed it and this was the only way. I don't know, but that's just what happened. So we had to the mounts, you know, permanently on here, and it was a clamp, you know, with a 5/16 head screw that used to go in there. You'll figure that out, but anyways, it's probably going to look different if this is on a Cadillac or a Oldsmobile, Buick, whatever, but it's going to be very similar. And we also had to just kind of bend this and reroute this up there. It's not a huge deal. So it's on there now. We're going to get the all the gauges out, pull a vacuum, and get it charged up, and then we're going to get the wiring done. So we'll do that right quick. On this car, they've got 3 wires going to this plug, but these 2 wires join together. I don't know why they do that. Maybe it's an extra ground. I don't know. But to find the one that you need, we'll do is we got the negative right here just on a ground, and then we got this one. I just, you know, without looking at a wiring schematic, I just assumed it was going to be that one. And so if you go into the car, and oh, my key's already on, so I had to double check this, but what we're going to do is we're going to switch the AC on, and our fan's also going to come on, obviously, but switch the AC. The test light came on, and it goes off. Test light goes on and off. So that's the wire that we need. So what we're going to do is find a spot, probably back in here a little bit. We're going to pull this out a little bit more, and then we're going to take this wire and we're going to cut it, and then we're going to go and run, and I'm going to run it all along this line here over to there. But essentially what we're doing is, let's see if the little schematic that they have drawn here, you can see that they got, see, that wish mine was designed more like this, because this would have more room right there probably. I don't know. Anyways, so you got one wire going over here to ground, and then you got the other wire, you know, original from the control wire. So we're going to cut it, and then we're just going to place this sensor in series, is what they call it. And so your new control wire is now going to go. And so what we're going to end up doing is we're going to cut this. And so this wire from this side is going to be routed around there, and then it's going to plug in on the one side of the sensor, and it doesn't matter which one. There's 2 terminals on this switch, and then the other side is also going to come and reroute and come all the way along here, and then it's going to go into the wire that's cut going that way. So pretty easy, not too difficult there. And then we're gonna have this thing pulling the vacuum and all that while we're doing that. And yeah, we'll keep moving right along. Okay, so I'm gonna show you this wiring here before I get it all taped up, just maybe if it wasn't clear enough the way I was explaining to it before. So you remember this wire and this wire were connected right there. So we cut it. Now we're going out this way with the green wire all the way to the plug. Okay, so we got the green wire right there going into the side of this switch, and then the other wire coming out is the yellow. You follow all the way along right back into what was the power for. So now when you turn on the AC, instead of just going from here straight to here, it's just going to make this loop through this switch and then back. That's essentially what it's doing. And as you notice, I did have to re-loosen this and move this over a tiny bit just to get it inside of here, because now it'll be totally clear the hood now. The other thing we're doing is replacing the expansion valve. It's something you just might as well do since the system's evacuated. So you're just doing the undoing that, and then you just got to take this stuff apart. I'm just gonna reuse it, wrap it up, probably just put some electrical tape around it. Anyways, here's the new one. That happens to be the part number. I think that came from Rock Auto. I don't remember how much it was, sorry. But anyways, just something that might as well be done since the system's evacuated and everything. So yeah, we'll get that done right quick. Like I said, it's pretty self-explanatory on how everything else goes with these fittings. Just make sure they're snug. When you put the O-rings on, put a little oil on the O-rings. Some of the, the AC oil and whatnot. And I went ahead and just filled this line. This line is usually full of oil, and I just topped this line off with some oil, put it in there, and then the machine I'm using will also shoot the oil in while it's charging also, but got a little bit added in there. So yeah, we're moving right along. Just wanted to point out all this kind of stuff. So we'll get this expansion valve off of here, get this wiring all cleaned up, and have it pull a vacuum and make sure we're good. So okay, so this is our finished product here. Got our new expansion valve down in there, retaped up the insulations, crap, whatever the heck that stuff is. This is usually what I do. We routed our wiring all around. Again, it could be, I usually do maybe just a smidge better job on other folks' cars. I just was running short of wire of how much I wanted. I just didn't want to pull it off a new roll. But it'll work fine. So that's, usually I run it in a loom, and I run all the way underneath of this deal where you can't even see it. But that's how this one's going to be until I get tired of it, which actually probably be right quick. So the thing is about charging this system now with this in here, right here on the compressor, it says that you're 4.25 pounds, and it's plus or minus 0.25 pounds. So you're essentially, you can go to 4.5 pounds, or you can go to 4 pounds, and technically you'd be within specs on this. That is a charge of R12. Now when you're converting these systems over, some people will say you need to replace every single O-ring seal and all that, and that's fine if you want to do that. Most of the O-rings that you're messing with when you do this is you got this O-ring, you got that O-ring, and you got two O-rings down here for the expansion valve. So those have all been replaced, but like I didn't mess with the one that would be in there, and I didn't mess with the one that would be in there or on the back side of the compressor, and you're totally fine with that. Now as far as charging goes, when you're going to go, because this, like I said, was an R12 system, and we're gonna have to get us a sticker to go over top of this. It's my car, I own it, but if you're doing this for other people, you'd want to say, hey, this thing's been converted to 134A. And so as far as charging this goes, the 134A, as we discussed earlier, works off of a little bit different pressure, which actually takes a little bit different volume. And they say about 15% less of what you would need for an R12 system. Okay, so let's just use 4 pounds as a number, and you do 4 times 16 ounces in a pound. We come up with 64 ounces, and then we go times, and if you're gonna do 15%, let's do 0.85. It's gonna be 54 and a half. These cars with 134A, I've pretty much gotten by with about 25% less Freon, and have these systems work extremely well. So if you do that, so if we had the 64 and we go times 0.75, we end up with about 48 ounces in here. And honestly, I think I put about 44 in this, and they cool. I mean, this one's cooling extremely well. So you're going to kind of play around with the I would say from about 45 ounces, you know, up to 50. But these systems, and whatever it is, and I can't say, you know, much. I've had a few Cadillacs and stuff, been about the same way. But these particular systems, they're not quite as finicky, it seems, and you pretty much put enough about, you know, in there, and at about 15 to 1700 RPM, give or take, that's going to bring your pressure on the low side to about 35 psi, and the high side, oh, I can't remember what, it's going to be around 200. That's going to be pretty good, and that's what this one's running at, with about 44 ounces put into it, and it's working extremely well. Like I said, today it's actually 87 degrees, and I had this thing running about 1500 RPM, and I had it pumping out about 33 degrees out of the vents. So that's for me, that's way more than enough. I mean, that's totally fine. And then you get this thing down the road, and you get it cooling better with the condenser, more air flowing, rather than just parked in here. It's going to work extremely well. And so anyways, that's that. Oh man, nice cold AC. And these cars got really good blowers when they work good. It blows a lot of air. So I mean, I had one of these 10 years ago that had the original R12 in the system. Man, you could freeze meat in here. Well, this won't get that cold, but right now it's about 85 degrees outside, and I just had a thermometer stuck in the vents, and I mean, we're putting out about 33 degrees coming out of the vents right now. So that's, I mean, that's good enough. So when we get up in almost to 100, high 90s and 100, and sometimes 103, 105, you know, but mostly the high 90s. And it, you know, this is cold. Like, I'm holding my hand right here in front of that vent, and I mean, I can't leave my hand there because it is chilly. So looking really good. And to me, I just don't see the point in keeping the R12, because with this new I guess a POA valve in sorts, with the 134A, we've got you know, to where it's working fantastic. And God, I just love that long ass hood. Great day for a drive when it's hot outside with air conditioning. Thanks for watching.